All right, welcome everybody to another episode of F.L.O.W Presents. We are coming to you again with another great topic. Today's topic is going to be, have you been dating too long or not? Panelists, we have some panelists with us today. I'm just going to go from my right. Daniel, you're the first panelist up, so just introduce yourself. Go ahead and we'll go down the line there. Just say a little bit something about yourself.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Daniel Zhu. I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm a saxophonist, just to give a little background on what I do. I'm a saxophonist, musician, and pretty much I've been serving the Lord, I would say, seriously for the past 2 or 3 years. So, yeah.
Right. All right. Victoria, you're next up. I see you muted there. Okay.
Hi, my name is Victoria. I was invited on, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you guys today.
Good. All right. Araba.
Hi everyone, my name is Araba. Yeah, I'm excited to get into this discussion because I think it's a really important topic.
Great. All right. Sinclair.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kay Sinclair. Excited to be on the panel today. I am originally from Jamaica, transposed to DC, and again, transposed to Chicago, where it is currently quite cold. So hope it's warm where you are, but excited to get into the conversation today.
Sounds good. All right. And Ricky.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ricky hailing from Washington, D.C., but currently stationed per se on the beautiful island of Bermuda. Happy to have this conversation with everyone on this line. Should be a good topic here.
Lucky you, Ricky, man. Lucky you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, guys, we're going to get straight into it. Basically, let me just give you my backstory on this. Dating too long or not, realistically, we all have a lot of things in life that take, a considerable amount of time to complete. Majority of people who take the regular route of going to school, and completing school and working, and then maybe going back to finish whatever other certifications or other schooling, it takes some time, and some people realistically, they're not really seriously looking to date or to get married or anything like that until later on in life, which is just, that's just how life is sometimes. And some folks, it's different for them. They're high school sweethearts, and they end up getting married, and they probably date from high school to around mid or the ending of college, 20, 22, 21, and then get married, But I think that life has some interesting things that happen, the things that come up, and I think that we got to pay attention to things like that. But I do think that it depends on the couple's personal walk, and how well they know each other. I don't think there's a certain amount of time, that there will take, for people to actually say, well, we've been dating for way too long. I think there's outrageous things like 5 and 10 years, but at the same time, if that's just how long it took them, we don't know what took them so long, but I think it depends on their personal walk. So I'm going to give it over. Who wants to give their answer first? Let me see. I don't see any raised hands. Wait. Ricky, what you think about that, man?
Yeah, I mean, dating is one of those things that, as you get older, you realize it's a personal thing. There is no kind of set, by the time I'm 25, this is going to happen. Everything's going to line up as it is. I think the younger you are, the less you know about what the future is going to hold. So you're going to date for longer to kind of figure out. It's kind of like going to school and trying to figure out what classes, what major you're going to choose. As you get a little more exposed to the world, it takes shorter, or it should take shorter, because a little more about what you want. But at the same time, exactly more about what you want, which makes the field per se that you're looking to date a little more narrow. So this whole idea of how long it's going to take really depends on what stage you are in life.
Mm. So is there a certain time length that you think?
I mean, I've heard successful things happen within 30 days, right? You dated for 30 days and people were together for 40 years. You also have a lot of situations where people date for 4 or 5 years and it doesn't work. So, there's no magic solution to it. I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Daniel, what do you have to say about that, man?
So dating, as you said, is kind of like a big, it's not just a big topic, but it's kind of like something that's growing rampant. I would say all over the world. Everybody's looking for love in different shapes and different forms. As Ricky said, I don't think it's one of those things that you can kind of put a stamp on and just say that, it's for this time or it's not for this time. I just think more or so, I don't know. I mean, my stance on it is that I know the Bible says that, it's good for a man to not be alone. But I think we take that to the extreme, and we rather, as far as looking for quality, we don't look for quality, but we kind of look for quantity. So people kind of just get in this habit of just going for whatever they think qualifies. And so like they create their own qualifications, and then they find themselves in relationships that are not really beneficial to them. And so what they end up doing is that they're in recovery mode from each relationship. So like they're trying to recover from like whatever that person took for them, whether it be spiritually, emotionally, or physically. And they just get into this, like I said, it's just this tumbleweed storm, I guess, of just falling into different relationships. So, I think if people were able to just kind of sit back and rather not be so, how should I say, eager to find someone, I think they would find quality. They would likely be more able to see like what is quality instead of, just going for whatever they think kind of qualifies. So, yeah.
All right. We have a raised hand here, Rabba. Go ahead.
Yeah, to answer the question of is there such thing as dating for too long? In the grand scheme of things, I would say yes. Only if you're dating with intention. So if you have two people who know what they want in life, they're at a financially stable place, mentally stable, emotionally stable, and they have the same goals. I don't see a point in dating for 5 plus 10 plus years. We are both capable as adults to make that step and to either get married or what have you. However, I do understand that it varies for different circumstances. Like I do know couples who they met in college, and because they were not financially ready, they could not get married right away. They had to date for a few years. So I think there is such thing as dating for too long, but it's definitely situational.
Okay. Yolanda?
I agree with all the sentiments that everyone said so far. I definitely think that there is a societal pressure of, I don't know if there's a certain time frame, but I think Dylan, you mentioned earlier on, get married by 25 or get married by 30. But there are societal things, and I know you've seen it in the church. If you see a couple like dating, after a while, you start getting questions of, well, when are you going to get married? There's always that kind of pressure to take that next step. And I don't think it's very fair to put those impositions on people, but unfortunately, it's something that we face in society. But I do think that it's the decision of whoever's in that relationship to know the path that they're going on, because even though there may be outside pressures or time frames for when we're supposed to be doing this, I think it depends on what's going on in your relationship, in your situation, and no one knows that better than you. Tying it back to Araba's point that she stated, there is probably a point where you are too long, and I think that comes from you knowing as she said, being intentional, or you knowing when, and both people, I think, knowing when it is that they should cut or stay or move forward, instead of just staying in a state of, let's just be here to be here because it's safe and we don't want to get out of this space, or I've been with this person for so long, why not stay here, but I'm not really going forward with them. I don't see it going anywhere. I think, yeah.
So this basically what you're saying, you're comfortable with what you know. So you would want to, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, we do like being in the safe place, you know, so I guess that does make sense for sure. Victoria, what about you?
I couldn't help but agree with what everyone said. I was just kind of like a note taker, so I was seeing what people were saying, and I agree with it. Going back to Araba and Yolanda about what they said, I definitely do think that society does put a pressure on these relationships, and it can also even come from family. Being a Nigerian myself, I know that parents would say, so when is it time, when are you gonna give us our grandchildren? They're like, what's going on? What's happening now? So I definitely agree that society has a role on how long a relationship should be, or how long a dating relationship should be particularly. And I also think it does vary from situation to situation. Going back to Araba, you can be financially unstable. You may have some things that you're still working on, and it may not be ready for marriage yet. So I definitely do agree. And going back to what Daniel said as well, quality does matter a lot. And every person that you meet is going to differ. So you can be dating one person for 5 months, and then at that 5th month you realize that's just not the person. You can be dating someone for 10 years and it's just not the person. So the quality of each person differs, and of course, because of that, the amount of time that person is in a relationship for will also differ. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. 10 years. That's a long time. I don't know. I don't know.
It
I don't
happens.
know. I guess it does depend on their, the
Yeah.
situation, but sheesh, I don't know. I feel like a book is coming out of that one. So we're gonna go to the first question, the first poll. You guys see at the top of the screen there, everyone on YouTube, all of the other streaming places as well, Facebook. There's the way how to answer at the top. Just text Flow Church 686 to 22333. And we want to ask this question, can you date someone for too long, realistically? And it's not as easy of a question to say, well, it is, because then we can compare it to certain situations where some people have, broken the limits on the amount of time you probably should be dating, in the sense that, people start asking questions like, aren't you guys married already? Or, those societal pressures that we all go through. So you guys can start that poll, as we answer these questions here. Can everyone see the poll there? Everyone see that? Okay, good stuff. Cool. All right. So yes, I mean, let's mix it up a little bit while everyone's answering. So far, we have yes, generally. Okay. Okay. All right. So, give me an example of where you think that possibly it might be a bit outrageous to be dating that long. Does anyone have an example of maybe that? See, Ricky, you have your hand.
Yeah, so maybe I had a question first. Dating for what purpose? So dating too long is all based on what the goal is, right? So some people are happy dating for 20 years and not getting married. I guess that's called dating, maybe. But I'm assuming we're all talking about dating to go into a more committed relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think sometimes, and I've heard this from females in the past, they've been in relationships and they've been waiting for someone to ask, for that person to ask them to marry them for a long time. But they're also scared to let that relationship go because there's uncertainty outside of that relationship. So you have to take into consideration that fear and what is outside of that known that known person, how do you know what's going to be on the other side?
True. Okay. All right. And then so that leads to another question. I think we have a question in the comments. What is dating realistically? Are we legitimately dating to get engaged? Are we dating to see where this goes? Are we, because there can be various different explanations of that. And I think that also gets caught up in expectations as well. But this, I mean, what is dating to you guys? Like, what's the definition of it? Is there one clear definition, or is there some sort of, you know, I guess communication that has to happen before we get that definition from somebody else? Go ahead, Victoria.
Okay, so there's like a lot of definitions when it comes to dating, and I think it just differs from person to person. I personally believe, or I know, or I think at least, that dating is in preparation to get married. And some people may say dating is just to go on dates. It's literally in the word. So I think it differs. But as for me, I think that dating is just being with someone, being in a relationship with someone, particularly girlfriend, boyfriend status, to see if you're, I guess, qualified to marry.
Somebody. Okay. Okay. All right. So then that leads. So does anyone else have a quick answer on that as well? Robert, go ahead.
Yeah. As a Christian, right? We know that God, in order to glorify God, marriage is one of the ways where we can glorify God. And so when I think of dating, I think of being very intentional about seeking a helpmate so that we can both glorify God together. Just like the brother Ricky said earlier, there's a text of, it is not good for man to be alone. And I think that God has placed the desire of marriage on some of our hearts. Not everyone, it's not for everyone. I understand that, but a lot of us. And so once we understand this, when you talk about dating, you like someone, the person likes you, you're both attracted to each other. You both share common interests, and you take the step further by courting, getting to know each other, whether this is through dates, just spending time together to build a relationship, and then you take steps from there on to hopefully get to marriage.
All right, Yolanda, I think you were raising your hand that I see.
Yeah, I think, yes, we all say, and then we can probably give like a definition for the word dating, but I guess we all each, as you said before, have our own definitions. So I think what's important is for whoever is dating, the two people who are getting together need to be on the same page as to like, okay, what do we both want from this? What do you want? What do I want? Just so there's, because I think there can be mixed expectations if you go in with a certain definition and the other person's definition isn't that. So is there a specific definition for dating? For me, yes, it would be, I'm going with the intention of, I would like to get to know you in the pursuit of, not pursuit, but hopes, or see if we can get married or something like that. But it's important for you to have that discussion with the other person because they may not be on the same page as you. So that's why I think it matters. The definition of dating matters in that situation. The two people who are in there, not what everything else kind of defines dating as.
Gotcha. Okay. Daniel, I think we missed your hand there. Sorry about that.
No problem. Yeah, I was gonna say something quick to I guess bounce off of what everybody else was saying, in the sense, dating to me is a stage before you get into a relationship with somebody. So essentially, I think, it was touched upon that it's like you getting to know somebody, you going on dates, physical dates, and getting to know what type of person that you're getting with. Dating to me personally is, I would love for that to result in marriage. Now, I think what us believers, and when I say believers, I mean Christians, I think a mistake that we sometimes make is that we put that end goal, right, at the end of dating. And what in turn it may do is, I don't want to say undermine whatever you and that person have going on, but you kind of almost put unrealistic pressures on a relationship that may not be for that. You know what I mean? So saying this to say, like friends, for example, if you're friends and you go to a church, you two could start dating and going on dates to get to know each other. But if you've put out in the forefront, you know, Yolanda had mentioned it, that it's very important that both people know, you know, what they're trying to get into. But at the same time, when you put something out there, like when I date, it's because I want to get into marriage, you're almost putting the cart before the horse in a way, to me, because what you're doing is trying to tell the person that, you know, this is what I want this to end in. But at the end of the day, if that person is not in any shape, way, or form, you know, pushing towards becoming a husband or a wife, you're kind of making it a little dangerous as far as how your relationship will progress. So, you know, I feel like, you know, dating is, like, as everybody said, is different to other people. But at the same time, as a believer, I think we should be very careful in just always stating, I'm dating to marry, I'm dating to marry. Because if you're dating to marry, it could cause, you know, it could cause problems depending on who you're dealing with. You know?
Right. So that, okay. So that intention, that makes sense. Okay. I just want to make sure everyone is mindful of the timer as well. Just make sure you guys are looking at that.
Can I just respond to that really quickly?
Go ahead.
So Daniel, while I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think there's a lot of truth behind that. However, how I look at it is stating that intention will weed out the bad ones, or the ones that don't need to be there anyway. So I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with stating that intention early on, is because if you know you have an end goal, you have to actively be working towards it. And so I feel like maybe prolonging that you voicing, you know, this is what I want us to end in, it might allow space for those who don't need to be there essentially. I don't think, like, if you go on a first date, I don't think that should be the first thing out of your mouth, but it definitely shouldn't be after like the 10th date, the 12th date, or what have you. It should definitely be early on, like I would say third or fourth. So yeah, that's just my response to that.
Okay. All right. Ricky, I saw your hand.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, one of the nuances of that is, you know, letting someone know what your intention for yourself is. You know, if you want to get married, you let the person know, yeah, you know, I ultimately want to get married. But putting the pressure on that person when you're dating them, at least early on in a relationship, saying, look, the only reason I'm going on a date with you is because I'm trying to get married. That's a different thing than saying to the person, you know, I would like to get married to the right person, which allows allows a certain amount of growth within that relationship. Otherwise, all you're doing is kind of reaching towards a target, as to you're only here to satisfy a requirement that I have, is to get married, and so that's a tricky balance.
Okay. So there are probably some people that have like intent that it's kind of, I guess, shaded behind some other expectations. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Yolanda, I see you up next. Go ahead.
Yeah. So maybe we took it off the cliff that we're all just gonna go and state, like, on the first date, oh yeah, for sure, I'm only dating you because I want to get married to you. I agree that's definitely an unrealistic expectation because you don't even know the person. But like Ricky said, I think it's good, probably whenever you think the time is right, definitely not the first date. You need to figure out when the time is right for you with that person to voice what it is that you want, not putting pressure on that person to be that, because you have to let things run its natural course. If they end up being your friends, they end up being your friends, and that's just something that they know. Like, I think we both all have to have enough maturity to be like, this is what I want. If it's not you, that's okay. We can still be friends, but it's okay. Let's be friends going forward or part ways. I wasn't trying to imply, like, on the first date, look, I'm only dating you so that I can get married to you. That's unrealistic.
So, I mean, as you're saying that's unrealistic, um, let's look at this. Let's keep it 100. Some people actually do go out there and say stuff like that. Whether it may be someone that's older in age, closer to, their 40s or 50s. However, their intent. Some people do go on dates just to find a mate. So that I think that poses another question: is dating just for marriage? If you're being 100% honest with that person, if dating just for marriage, if you're dating just for marriage and you're telling the other person that, is that necessarily okay? If you're being honest with the other person, if you're saying, listen, I have a time limit, for however, whatever reason, I want to get married in the next 6 months to a year, 2 years, is that okay? If you're being honest with the other person and letting them know that up front. Victoria, I see you have your hand raised.
I think that definitely dating is in order to not to hope for marriage, but it's in hopes to marry. I believe that it shouldn't just be, because I agree with Daniel. I don't feel like as if it should just be thrown around easily. Whereas we're like, hey, I'm just dating you. I'm not just dating you to marry, but I'm dating you to marry, or I'm dating to marry. I feel like it should be kind of going back to what I said before about whether you're just dating to date and meet people or you're dating to marry. I feel like it should be a combination of that. You should let that person know, or I would let that person know, hey, I would like to get to know you, but I do hope to marry someone. I am dating to marry someone, but I am also interested in getting to know you. And through that, by not putting that pressure on them to to immediately say, hey, I'm trying to marry, I feel like that reduces the pressure, and eventually you start to learn more about that person and you see whether that person is right for you or not. Because you can have someone say, hey, I'm also looking forward to getting married too. And maybe later on you just at first you may have that thought that, okay, we're looking for the same exact thing, but our characteristics don't really mend well. So that's kind of like, to me, the point of starting with, I'm dating you to get to know you, but the end goal of it is to marry.
Robert, go ahead.
To answer your question, Dylan, I think there's levels, and we have to get rid of the stigma around conversations about marriage, where if someone voices their interest in getting married, some people automatically think, oh, that person is desperate, or they don't know how to be alone, or they need to be comfortable with themselves. There's nothing, as humans, we are not islands. There's nothing wrong with seeking companionship. And I feel as though when you're dating, yes, you need to be very intentional about how you voice your want to get married, because sometimes it can come off the wrong way, or sometimes you don't need to be so forward and in someone's face and say like, hey, I'm on a time limit. But at the same time, you have a goal, you have an end goal in mind, and you need to be honest with yourself about that, and you need to be honest to the person that you're dating. And I think it's up to the person who is interested in getting married to, how do I say? I think it's up to the person who's interested in getting married to being very careful with how they go about dating, because some people would like to get married and are doing it to fill a void. And so that's when you can see some people are desperate, or they're not doing it for the right reasons. But some people are honestly, they want to get married because they're at a stage in their life where they're successful. They want to glorify God, or they just want a companion. And I honestly don't see anything wrong with that. So I think there's levels to the conversation.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, Daniel, go ahead. You're still muted, bro. See if I can unmute him. Yeah, you're still muted.
Yeah, my apologies, guys. What I was trying to say was, excuse the noise 1 second. Oh shoot. Yeah, so like I was, That's funny.
Technical difficulties. Technical difficulties. It's all right.
Yeah, my bad, guys. Yeah. So, what I wanted to say was, I think, people tend to think that, when you say things like this, that that you are saying the feeling or the yearning to want to be in a relationship with somebody, that there's something wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with wanting companionship. So I agree with Araba. But what I will say is that when we've dating was kind of a realm that was created because they wanted people to exist outside of marriage. And when I say wanted people to exist outside of marriage, they wanted relationships to be able to have some form of context that marriage kind of shares, but not marriage, right? And so they created this stage so people could get to know each other. Now, as we've looked at it, dating has now, it encompasses, depending on the type of person that you are, but being intimate with somebody. It encompasses so many different aspects. And my original point of what I was trying to get at is that dating doesn't necessarily need to have an end goal. Dating, essentially, to me personally, is you just simply getting to know someone to a degree. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, meaning that you can find somebody in church who's your friend and you can get to know that person. And you don't necessarily have to put the title of dating on there. Dating is also created so that people could have, I don't want to say a title, but they want to be able to associate to this person. Okay, this is my, some people call it dating as boyfriend and girlfriend. Some people call it dating before boyfriend and girlfriend. But I'm saying all this to say that there is a realm that exists outside of marriage where you don't have to put a title of dating on it. You could get to know somebody, sincerely, without having to put that title on there and without having to put those parameters that, oh, you know what, I'm trying to get to marriage. You don't need to state that. If you get to know the person to a certain level degree, you'll be able to see if they're capable of you marrying them or if that you want to be with them. And they will be able to see that too. It will be evident in you guys' actions and expressions towards each other. But to say that, like, dating is to marry, like, dating, first of all, who created that? God, it's dating is not even in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? So saying that to say, not to say that because it's not said specifically or explicitly in the Bible that it doesn't exist, but I'm just saying that to say that, like, we kind of created something and now we're trying to find a way to make sense out of it. Right. And what I really originally believe is that, you can get to know somebody. You can get to know somebody, get to know them. When I say that, I mean in different ways, go out to dinner, whatever the case is. You don't have to be intimate with them. You don't have to kiss them. You don't have to have a title on them to signify to the world that this is mine or this is somebody who I'm trying to get to know. But because we've created this now.
Oh, I think you got cut off there. Sorry about that, but just be mindful of the timer. Yeah, it's gonna cut you off at that 2 minutes. But go ahead, Araba.
Yeah. Okay, so my whole thing is, we are not. This goes back to what I said in the beginning about intention, and I feel as though you're stepping into very dangerous territory if you are dating and you have an end goal. There has to be intention behind it. You can't just. I hear what you're saying, Daniel, but I just feel as though dating without having these conversations and communicating with that person, then what are you really dating for? Are you just dating to pass the time? Like, I know I want to be a professor. I have to go to school. There's a couple of things that I have to do in order to get there. I'm not just gonna show up in the classroom and, hey, I'm here. There's levels. And you have to be very intentional about how you go about getting to that end goal. And so I think, when you're dating and you have intention and you know that you want to eventually be married, you can't just feel a vibe off of the other person. You have to verbally say these things, because I've dated guys before who, I've just been quiet about what my end goal was. And I thought because of the way he was acting and the vibe he was giving me, he wanted the same things. He did not. And I only blame myself in not voicing what I wanted. And so I think we would have to be very careful in saying, it's okay to not say what you want. To me, it's a little bit of a dangerous territory, but I still respect what you're saying.
Okay. All right. So that's a good response to one of the questions we're going to ask from YouTube, actually from Kiki. So she has a question here. So what other reason would there be for dating if not to marry? And I think that ties in greatly with, I think, what Daniel was saying. Well, realistically, if you're dating to marry, you don't necessarily need a title. But with her question, what would dating be for if it's not to marry? Ricky, go ahead.
Sounds like friendship.
Yeah, I mean, so I go to work 8, 10 hours a day, right? So that means that there's up to 14 hours left out of my day to do something. Dating could just be to fill the rest of my day with something to do or someone to have fun with. A lot of people find dating to be exactly that. With no intention, I have time on my hands. It'd be nice to spend time with somebody, so let me just date multiple people or date one person to be able to fill that void in terms of like my quality of life, right? So, a lot of people date for that reason.
Okay. And then do you think that ends up in a sort of situationship if you're dating with a necessary purpose, I guess?
No, I mean, so we've talked about intention, but we haven't talked about, the concept of falling in love, right? Falling in love because you spent time with somebody and you feel a spark and then it leads to something. I know that may not be the kind of ideal from a Christian standpoint to let things evolve. You have to state the intention and you have to go through a process of courting and so forth and so on. But I don't know if there's anything wrong with getting to know someone and realizing one day you wake up and be like, I want to marry that person, right? I don't know if there's anything specifically wrong with that. You of course have to be careful with that being kind of your modus operandi where all you do is date and you'll figure it out as it goes. But I don't think there's anything wrong with falling in love.
Gotcha. Okay, Daniel, see your hand is raised. After you, we're going to answer another YouTube question.
Yeah, I'll be mindful of the time this time. My bad. But no, what I wanted to say was, Robert made a point that, it sounds like friendship. And I think essentially that's what we all should be doing until we find somebody that we feel like, we want to take that next step with. Friendship, once again, to me, is it is the purest form of dating in the sense of that you're getting to know somebody, getting to know who they are, their family's background, getting to know what they like, what they don't like, all those things. You can do all of that within the realm of friendship. You don't have to call it dating to, like I said, once again, give it some type of name that everybody's supposed to validate. You know what I mean? I'll restate the statement that I made. Dating is not in the Bible. So, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to say that, if you don't go by what's in the Bible, then no. But what I'm saying is that there's a wisdom as to why dating is not in the Bible, because that is not something necessarily that God created. So meaning we created that, once again, to be something that was a little less than marriage and that had a little different, rules and regulations. You understand what I'm saying? So dating to pass the time. I don't believe in being with somebody and not having a purpose. Like even our friendships, we should have purpose in our friendships. People who we know, we should have purpose for those relationships. So the same thing should be with somebody that you feel interested in. Get to know, what the purpose of your relationship is, and then move forward with that.
Okay. All right. So we have another YouTube question here. So do you think that the added phases of dating in today's society extends the dating periods? For example, the talking phase before you're actually a couple. And I hear so many different answers to this, so this should be really interesting because today we have the talking phase, we have the situationship phase, we have courting, we have all these different phases. So do you guys think that adds to that whole time limit of dating? Go ahead, Victoria.
I think it does. I think that when you are in a talking phase or when you're friends, as Daniel mentioned, I feel like you can see little sparks in someone that you realize this is a person that is capable of dating. And then while getting to know them, I feel like friendship and dating is a little bit different or is different in terms of dating is a little bit more intimate, whereas there's more responsibilities taken on, whereas like marriage, for example, is that level of ultimate responsibilities. There's a lot more that comes into play with that. But I feel like when it comes to these stages that occur or take place, or what society is putting on, like talking and then dating and then marriage and so on and so forth, it does play a role. And it plays a role in getting to know that person, seeing if that person is right for you. Because a lot of people go into dating sometimes for the wrong reasons, as mentioned, whether dating is just to date or whether dating is to marry. And sometimes people can go in for selfish intentions, and they don't realize that they have to look for what is in that person and why they wouldn't allow, or why they wouldn't change that person, because that person just best suits them. So I feel like these stages are important. It starts from just meeting, then it goes into friendships or talking phase or whatever, and then it goes into dating, and then a little bit more of these responsibilities come into play. And sometimes you may see it not want to happen at friendship. You may be like, ah, this person is definitely not worth being my boyfriend or my girlfriend. And then you might be dating, nah, this person is definitely not worth being my fiance or fiance or wife or husband. So I feel like these stages that society has allowed are good. They're beneficial to help us find the right person.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying you agree with the stages. But I want to put another question out there then. So is there a time limit for these stages? For example, if you meet somebody, right, we know that there's a lot more pressure for those relationships that are formed through you meet someone and from day one, you guys are in that dating sort of realm. You guys have, there's a pressure to say, okay, well, I'm trying to see how the other person's going to react. And there's less pressure when you're more so, I guess, confessing, how you feel to for a longtime friend, someone that you've gotten to know over the years, right? There's a little bit less pressure. But how much time do you think goes into when you first meet somebody, the meet stage, the date? What's the time limit on each of those stages? Ricky, I see your hand.
Can I just make a comment? This sounds overly complicated, right?
Mm.
And I don't know if it really sounds like a dissertation project. So I don't know if we're over, and I know, of course, you're supposed to go into things with discernment and awareness, and there's a process, but maybe that's why relationships are so tough, because we've made them so overly complicated. I don't know. Just a thought.
Okay. All right. Victoria, I see your hand again.
I kind of wanted to address that. I agree with you. It's like relationships are complicated regardless, because you're dealing with another person now. That's why a lot of people say you need to love yourself before you can love someone else. And truly, it's hard to really, we learn so many things about ourselves that we may learn later on in years. It's exactly the same with the person. You learn so much with the person, because you just learn so much more about a person that you didn't realize when you first met them as friends, or when you first knew them or when you first started dating with them. It differs. And I was just watching a video before this, but they were saying that love is not a resting place. It's a complicated situation, because we're dealing with someone else now. And it's just like having a roommate. Your friend, you knew that person as your friend initially, but then that friend turns into a roommate. And you're like, oh, I can't live with you no more. Like, there's levels, and that levels help us clarify whether that person is right for us or not. And going back to the question about whether there's enough, whether what time is the time or whatever, like for each stage, that depends on the people. They could be like, I want to date you. They could be like, I want to stay as friends. It's up to them. I know my time is gone.
All right. Yeah, thank you, gang. Thank you guys for being mindful of the timer. Daniel, I saw your hand. Got to unmute there. Still mute.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think actually those stages that you named prior to actually dating, talking stage, whatever stage that people create for themselves these days, I think rather than prolonging, getting to that goal of dating, I think what it actually does, it prohibits you from getting to that stage. The more stages that we kind of create prior to that, what you find is that people once again, try to emulate what takes place at the highest degree, and they try to emulate it within the small things. So lines get blurred, intentions get blurred. Intentions are sometimes often even lied in those stages, because, people kind of figure that they can kind of perpetrate, at the talking stage. And then maybe they feel like they got to start telling the truth a little bit more, when they start getting higher and higher up. So, I don't necessarily think it prolongs, but I think it does definitely keep people from actually getting to that last stage. And as far as the time, you shouldn't be spending time, to me, you shouldn't be spending time in a talking stage. You shouldn't be spending time in any one of those things that are not bearing any type of fruit, because those stages, to me, don't bear any fruit for what you're trying to accomplish. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have we want to do a few more YouTube questions, and then we'll move to our next poll. So the next YouTube question we have, let me see here. Is dating more about finding out about another person or yourself and what you like? Go ahead, Robert.
I think it's both. When you date, you find out things that you like and you don't like. And you also find out things you like and don't like in that person you're dating. So I think it goes for both ways. Yeah. So I feel as though dating essentially, I keep saying the word intention, but to me it applies to like a lot of what we're saying. When you have intention behind dating and what you're doing. If I want to be someone's girlfriend or something, and I'm dating someone, and I don't like certain things that they do or they say, then that's a way for me to reflect and use it in the next scenario, or use it with the next person that I'm dating. So now I can take that information and do things differently. So yeah, I think dating, it kind of reveals things about the other person, and it reveals things about you as well.
Okay. Okay. Let me see here. Another question here from YouTube. Do you think having extended dating relationships increase the risk of having premarital sex? And just to go deeper into that question before you guys raise your hand. So, I mean, of course, we know that, premarital sex is something that, is looked down upon. We're not supposed to actually engage in that before marriage. It does happen sometimes with some relationships, but does that, having extended relationships, does that actually increase the chance of you getting tempted by that? That's another question from YouTube. Sophie, you want to go for that question?
Yeah, sure. I absolutely think that an extended dating period absolutely does increase the chance of premarital sex, only for the simple fact that in the world we live in, sex is it's a natural thing now. Like, it's not shunned upon. It's almost like it's a central part of a relationship. Whether or not you are somebody born and raised in the church, you'll still see it everywhere. And I think if you're not dating with intentionality, if it's not courtship, if it's not something you're looking to be married to, and you're just together for an extended period of time, it's going to be only for so long that you guys can resist those urges, because urges are going to be there. So why resist those urges for 2 years? You're going to fall into that level of sin. So if you're not intentional about who you're dating, because I think that extended period of time, it can be a lot of time wasted, because you can know a tree by its fruit. I don't think it takes 2 years to know if this is somebody you want to be with. And so that extended period of time, it's bound to fall into some level of sin.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, Victoria, I see your hand.
I do agree that an extended period of time most likely can increase those urges to have sex, because just like Sophie said, it is everywhere. It's left and right. It's so natural to have sex before marriage. I agree with that. I think that the one thing that needs to be considered is unfortunately, a lot of people go into marriage because they want to have sex. Because normally people are like, I just want to get married because I've been waiting to do this. I've been wanting to do this, and they don't realize all of the other factors that come into play when it comes to marriage. It was something that Sophie said that I forgot and I wanted to mention, but when I remember, I'll probably say it. But yeah, I definitely do think that like the urge can be can increase, but I also think that self-control is really important. I think that when you and your partner understand the end goal that we've been mentioning, and also understand that, you know, this is something for us to learn more about each other, then both of you can understand and have that self-control to say, okay, I'm not going to do this right now. I'm still learning more about you, so let me learn more about you before we decide to do anything else. And then eventually, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, Rob, I see your hand.
Um, I think extended or not extended, the temptation is always there. But like Victoria said, depending on the people, if they have self-control, if they're able to practice self-control, then they're able to withstand the temptation of being in an extended relationship. But I also do think even in shorter relationships, we can see that the temptation to indulge in sex is also still there. But that just comes back to, if we're talking about Christian dating, where's your heart? And is your heart planted in God? You just have to equip yourself with the right tools in order to, not be tempted and to engage. So
All right. So we're gonna go to, I see some hands here. We're gonna go to the next poll, right? And we're gonna have everyone just start voting on that, and then I'll take the next couple of hands as we vote on that. Let's see. Can we get that put up there, Monique? And as we're getting that ready, Daniel, go ahead. I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I was gonna agree with Robert's point, that if you're in it, if you're a believer, and you believe in the teachings of God when it comes to love and sex under marriage, under the covenant of marriage, then you kind of already know that you're in this for the long haul. Long haul meaning that, like, whether or not God blesses you tomorrow, you'll still be faithful to His word. So in the same sense, you want to make sure that you're equally yoked, even though you're not married to this person, but you're equally yoked as in your heart posture, that both of you guys are interested in serving God by your actions, and your lack of action then having sex. You know what I'm saying? So, if you are with the person who, God may be ushering you towards, or, you feel like your heart is leading towards, then both of you guys will have that understanding that, you know what, I mean, even if we don't necessarily have the money to get married this year, or I don't have the money to get the ring this year, you know that you're in it for the long haul and that you're willing to do what it takes to live right. So, yeah.
Okay, Victoria, I see your hand there.
Yeah. So I just remembered. Sophie said that, or said something about like it doesn't take 2 years, or it shouldn't take this amount of years to know whether someone is right for you or not. I personally know someone who was dating someone for 10 years and they broke up. And then she eventually ended up dating someone for 15 years and she got married to them. I think that every person, when it comes to the amount of years that it is that you are with that person, it differs. It differs from person to person. Like I said, we don't even know that many things about ourselves. So it may take a while before you learn so much about another person. It I don't think that 2 years or a certain amount of time is what it should be limited on a person's, whether the person can date or not. But at the same time, I feel like if you really want to get married and that person also agrees, this is the right time. It's a choice between those two people about whether this year, whether it's the 10th, whether it's the 15th, is the right time to get married, personally.
Okay, that sounds interesting. So I see we have our poll up. How long should you date in order to truly know who a person is? We have the first selection: 12 to 15 dates, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or other. And other could be almost anything else. So you guys, quickly respond to that one. 12 to 15 days. That's really interesting. I wonder how long that is actually. At a time. Interesting. Daniel, I see your hand. Go ahead.
I'm just, if y'all see me looking away sometimes, because I'm looking actually at the YouTube live, and I'm looking at some of the comments, and one of the comments I wanted to actually, I guess, point out was, people tend to reference, especially men, we tend to reference that like, yo, like when you get a new car, like, you want to test drive it, right? You don't want to just, you don't just take it off the lot, purchase it, and then you're good with it, right? One of my thoughts that have been on that for years after hearing, that repeated and repeated and repeated is that not many people keep the same car for the rest of their life. So if I buy a car at 24 years old or 25 years old, I'm most likely not going to be keeping that car until I'm 84, to however long God, extends my life. So saying that to say, when it comes to picking your significant other, I know that's just one phrase out of many, but when it comes to picking your significant other, somebody who you want to cherish and be with for the rest of your life, there's more at stake than just if the buttons or if what she got in the trunk is cool. It's more at stake than that. You know what I mean? Can she be the helper to you? Can will you lead her effectively in your household as a man? You know what I'm saying? Will you love her like Christ loves the church? All those things are in consideration. So it's a little bit more, deeper than buttons. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Yolanda, how do you feel about that? Someone test driving or sampling before marriage?
Well, I feel there's fundamentally something weird with calling a woman a car and test driving her. But I mean, I don't share the same belief, but I can understand, because people, not just men, but women have said that to me. And I've had friends who have said, like, you don't want to get into something and then like whoever is not going to satisfy you or whatever. So to a certain extent, I do agree with Daniel's point that, after a while, those things, there's more to a marriage than just sex, although sex is a big part of it. There's more to a marriage, more to a person than just that. So yes, sex is important, but there are all of the other things that make up a person, make up who they are. Like Daniel said, are you compatible together? Is this person someone that I can see myself building a future with? Is this a person that God intended for me to be with, or I can see myself growing in Christ with that person? I think is more important than that. And then as things progress, and maybe I'm naive about it, but I believe that it's not just, oh, this person is so great and they please me. I think the act of sex together is you getting to know what the other person likes, and both people working together to try and please each other with what they have. So I don't think it's like people can learn and grow and change with regards to sex. I would hope it's not just the same thing that you're doing all the time. So that's my take on it.
Okay. All right. Rabbi, I see your hand there.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the question that was asked of how long does it take to date someone in order to really truly know them? I just want to say from personal experience, you have to ask God for discernment. And I'll tell you why. I've been in situations where I've dated someone for 2 months and we thought we were going to get married. And then I've dated someone for 2 years and I realized I didn't know him at all. So I say that to say, you never really know how long it takes. I wouldn't put a timestamp on it. I feel like in certain cases, the longer the better. However, that's not always true. So what you need in order to carefully distinguish the real from the fake, you have to be praying for discernment constantly, consistently. And you have to be open to not only hearing these signs, but taking them for what they are at face value, because I think God gives all of us signs, to be honest. He gave me signs in my 2-month relationship and in my 2-year relationship. I just didn't listen. So, it's hard to say how long it's going to take to date and truly get to know someone. but it's easier to say, I've dated this person and I've asked God for discernment. And I was able to distinguish that in 2 weeks, he wasn't real. In 3 years, he was real. It varies, but ask God for discernment.
Okay. All right. So we want to go to another YouTube question here. So online dating versus in-person dating. Is either one of those harder, and to add to that question, in today's society, you know, is it an easier path for certain people? Daniel, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was actually gonna speak to Araba's last point, but to answer your question, is it an easier path? I preferably am not a fan of necessarily online dating. I think it doesn't really make sense as far as, yeah, you can get to know somebody, whatever that means, online, but like, seeing them physically, getting to know them physically, see how they react to things physically, how they treat things physically, or I shouldn't say physical, but when I say physical, I just mean representing as far as in your face. I think those things are very important to be able to see. To kind of piggyback to what Araba's point was saying about with discernment, it's very hard to see, I think, red flags. It's harder to see red flags when somebody is virtual as opposed to them being physical. So, your discernment could really kick in, but it's going to be like super spiritual discernment in the sense where you can't really see what they're doing or know what they're really doing, but it's God just giving you insight as to what their life is really like, and what they portray. So yeah, I'm not a fan of online dating at all. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Victoria, I see your hand.
I'm not a fan either, but to be quite honest, I think it really depends on the person and the people involved. Not only the person, but the people involved, because I don't like online dating because there's a lot of dangers when it comes to online dating, just as there are dangers when it comes to being like in person. You really don't know a person's intention. You only know your own intentions, and you only know that person's intentions when it's communicated to you. However, it really depends from person to person once again, and the people involved especially, because as long as it's not dating online and you guys are online dating and it's just you haven't had an opportunity to meet this person in real life, have the opportunity to meet that person in real life. I think that's very, very important, because there's what people say, there's the online life and then there's the like in real life. So I feel like it differs, and the way how you portray yourself in both can sometimes be different. So I think that it's really important, if you are going to look into online dating, just be aware, and like what Araba said, also do pray for discernment. I'm not sure about, I know that I definitely believe that God does send signs, but he sends it differently. So as long as you're attentive and aware, then that's important.
Okay, Ricky, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of online dating, but from my experience and talking to friends, it's about online meeting, right? So it's widening the pool of people that you get to meet, and then the expectation is that you then meet up in person, and then then you form a relationship, right? If that works, for busy people who don't get a chance to always be out, and where church may be the same people all the time. Sometimes it's nice to have a larger pool of people to at least understand that are out there. But in the same way that dating long distance has its limitations, like if you're doing anything online for longer than just meeting someone, then you're playing yourself, right? In a lot of ways, long distance, if you're setting up your relationship to be only remote for long stretches of time, I think you're playing yourself as well. You're missing out on a lot of fundamental things about learning somebody through that one-on-one interaction in person.
Daniel, I see your hand.
I had a question, but I don't know if we're not done with this, so I'll ask it.
Well, you can go ahead and ask your question. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Well, so what I wanted to ask was, Robert had mentioned, I want to know from the group, she had mentioned discernment. And what I feel like I've found in Christian dating, and I know we're not talking about necessarily Christian dating, but I'm going to specify in Christian dating with this question. I feel like a lot of times I want to ask the group, do you guys feel like discernment is required for a red flag? I don't know if that question makes sense.
To identify a red flag or to move forward? What do you mean?
So to identify a red flag, yes. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Leon. Leonardo, it sounds like you had a...
Oh, no, I was just asking to clarify.
Gotcha. Okay, so Victoria, your hand.
Yeah. So the question is like, do you think you need discernment to be able to identify a red flag?
Okay. All right.
So I just looked up the definition of discernment. It might make it easier for us, but it simply says the ability to judge well. And it says in Christian context, perception in the absence of judgment with a view to obtaining spiritual guidance and understanding.
Okay. All right.
So I'd say, oh, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So the question was, do you feel like discernment is needed to be able to identify a red flag?
Yeah, you need it. Yeah.
Okay. Well.
All right, Victoria, I saw you raise your hand.
I feel like it's for a red flag. It can be to realize that that person is the one for you. It could be that this person doesn't like mashed potatoes and rather would prefer chicken. Like, I think that it can really be for almost anything, as long as it doesn't have to only be for a red flag. I wouldn't say that. I feel like it could be for anything about that person. Yeah, I don't think that it's only for red flags solely, but it can be for literally anything about that person and the things about that person or whatnot. Yeah.
So I wanted to expand a little bit. We just defined discernment, the ability to judge well. In order to, you don't have to have discernment. Okay. Yes, you need discernment in order to identify a red flag, because a red flag is something that, it gives you that signal that something's not right here. How can you judge that if you do not have discernment? So I think you have to have discernment in order to identify red flags, essentially.
Got you. Okay. Sophie, I saw you raise your hand. Oh, still muted there.
Y'all can hear me?
Yep, good. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So growing up, like the word discernment was always attached to some deep-rooted gift. Like you have the gift of discernment. So I think with dating, I think red flags are instinctual. I think you can feel it. Like I think the gift of discernment comes like further down. We need to practice wisdom, because the red flag you see, it's a red flag because that is something that is enduring, it's long lasting. It's like, this is who you are. It's not just like, oh, he pushed me one time. Is that a red flag? Will he do that again? That is a huge red flag. Like, you don't miss it. That will happen. Most times, statistically speaking, it's going to happen again. So as far as having discernment, I'll agree that you need it in a relationship. I think in my mind, I always wrapped it around this deep gift that you have. But I think a red flag shouldn't require that big of a gift. I think a red flag, it's a red flag because it's a red flag. You shouldn't miss it. There shouldn't be some deep cognizant level of thinking in order to identify it. I think a red flag is called a red flag because it's a red flag.
Okay. Daniel, I see your hand there.
Yeah, so I love all the points that were given. And Soph just had said that, it was made that it's this spiritual gift or whatever the case is, or some enlightenment that some people are gifted with. I don't believe it's so. I'm not one to believe that, only specific people have discernment. Now, to redirect it back to the question, there are things evidently, as Soph just said, that are, it's very clear that this is wrong. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, in today's society, you know, sometimes a female or males even do this. If, you know, you got your phone on you and you reject the calls, to some girls, that may be a red flag because they're trying to figure out, why is he not trying to talk to this person in front of me, or whatever the case is. That's clearly not a red flag, right? But somebody laying their hands on you, or whatever the case is, that could evidently be, or is, a red flag. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because that shows that there's a behavior stemmed from something deep rooted. You understand what I'm saying? So I don't, but, you know, to answer the question, I don't think that you need discernment to be able to tell what a red flag is. To me, red flag essentially just means that it's something that is blatantly wrong. You know what I mean? So I don't think you need discernment to be able to tell a red flag. You don't need to be able to judge well to understand that, you know, something's evidently wrong here. Like, this person doesn't just talk to me disrespectfully, but they talk to their friends disrespectfully. They talk to their mother disrespectfully, their father. You understand what I'm saying? So, but I think in society now, we discernment used to be this, you know, prized thing. Now discernment is this thing like, you know, you need to be able to discern, but sometimes it's not about discernment. Sometimes it's just evident. You know, somebody had mentioned the verse, you will know them by their fruits. A tree that's an apple tree will only bear apple tree. You know, it can't bear anything else. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So then in that case, I'd pose another question. Rabbi, I see your hand there to respond to that really quickly. So how long should it take to see a red flag? That's the next question I want to pose there after Rabbi. I know you want to respond to his rebuttal there. Go ahead.
I hear you, Daniel. I respect your opinion, but I disagree. Red flags are not always as simple as, oh, he hit me, clearly I should leave. Sometimes it's, his response to me expressing my feelings made me feel uncomfortable. And he constantly does this. And so we have to contextualize this, right? Not all red flags are going to be clear-cut, black, white. Certain things might take a little bit of deeper thought. Therefore, you need discernment. You need the ability to be able to judge well. I think certain things like, all right, he stole money out of my wallet. That's to me, that's a little bit more apparent. And I think it's easier for people to judge that and say, that's clearly wrong. But then there's certain circumstances where the person has some form of habit or something. And it's hard to really it's hard to really demonize that action, but you know, deep down inside, it's not something that is good for you. And so I think that's where discernment comes in, that helps you to be able to distinguish if this is a character trait that I want my spouse to have. So yeah, I just don't think discernment is black and white. And I'm at the timer.
Okay, Yolanda, I see you have your hand raised.
I did unmute myself. I think I did. I guess to your question, Dylan, is your question more how long does it take to identify? Because sometimes, going back to Araba's point, sometimes you do have to think through, and it takes sometimes, if it's more a nuanced situation, to identify that it's not really the person for you and this is a red flag. If it's more apparent, then I don't think there's an issue in the timing of when you identify it. It's more the timing of when, okay, I've identified it, what am I gonna do about it? Because at least what I've seen in certain of my friendships or other relationships is people know that the red flags are there. It's just, am I willing to take the step to then walk away? It's that timing between, okay, I've identified it. Okay, now when is my time for me to like walk away from this? Because this is something that it's a red flag, and this is not something that I want in a spouse or someone who I want to be with. I don't know what that time is because it varies for everyone. Hopefully in more serious situations, you'd identify it earlier rather than later. And unfortunately, in some situations, people identify it and they don't step away. And it takes them a lot of time for them to do that. But I think in those instances, as we've all been saying before, it's really good for you to have constant communication with God and know also that, or believe and trust in the hope that if you step away from this situation, that there is better for you after. I think it's the issue of, is there something else outside of this realm if I leave the context of this relationship that usually leads to a lengthened period of time?
Gotcha. Okay. So really quickly, I want to put up our last poll question. As I take the last three hands there, I see Ricky, Daniel, and Victoria, you have your hands there. So if we can put that on the screen really quickly, our last poll there. So the last poll question, you guys can vote while we answer the other questions. Will you break up with your partner? Oh, I can't really see the. Can you make it a little bit larger? There, I can't really. What I think it says is, will you break up with your partner if you guys are taking too long to get to the next step? And realistically, that's happened before, you know. So really quickly, so YouTube, everyone, take a quick second to actually vote on that. And Daniel, I see your hand there. Daniel, Victoria, and Ricky. Yeah. So Daniel, you can go.
Am I answering on what the poll question is, or are we just?
Yeah, you can if you wanted to respond to her last.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So Yolanda's point where she was mentioning, like, you know, talking about you know, if you see a red flag and then you're in a relationship with somebody, and then, you know, what is your next step? Are you actually going to do something about it? Are you going to leave the relationship? Are you going to continue the relationship? My biggest thing with that, and I think Rob had also mentioned it too, where she used the word like demonize, like you don't want to necessarily demonize someone's actions. And that's not what I was actually trying to convey when I said that. Right? Sometimes it's, you know, so evident. What I was actually trying to convey is that, you know, we live in a world where like cancel culture is very big. So people are so quick to cancel somebody and be like, oh, you know what, that's it. So we kind of have now use red flag as a term to say that, oh, you know what, this person's no good. Red flag does not mean that someone is no good. There are people in the Bible who had things that they dealt with, not even just in the Bible, but in the world. As human beings, we deal with certain things. And just because you have a flaw in a certain area does not necessarily mean that you should be canceled or you should be negated as somebody who cannot be a suitor for yourself. You know what I mean? So I'm saying that to say, you know, red flag doesn't necessarily mean that the person's canceled or that they have no redeeming qualities. Red flag just essentially means that this is something that I know I do not like, because you as a person know what you do not like and know what you cannot take and know what is not fruitful to your walk with God. So, you know, to Yolanda's point, like, you know, you stay in a relationship and you figure out what you can deal with and what you don't want to tolerate. And when you do figure that out, make your decision. And whatever you do it intentionally. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Rick, I saw you.
Yeah, I mean, I always get a little confused with this topic when it comes to, well, she lied to you, so why don't you just leave her, right? I mean, as Christians, this whole thing of forgiveness, and it's a conundrum as to how we look at how Christ deals with us and then how we treat our own relationships. So we're quick to, as Daniel said, we're quick to cancel people. I understand that there's wisdom that needs to be put in relationships and making decisions based on what people have shown you, but at the same time, sometimes people make mistakes. So not saying that people should be naive, that people are going to do you dirty, but people do make mistakes. In terms of the question on the poll, should you leave if someone is taking too long? I mean, that's a real personal, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to that question. I would say if you're in it and you want to invest in that relationship, then, you know, give the person as I wouldn't say as much time as they need. But if that's the person and they're going through something and they need that stops them from making a decision, then give them the time that they need. At some point, you need to communicate and figure out whether that's the direction that they still want to go with you. And at that point, you can make a decision as to, okay, let's cut this off and go our separate ways.
Gotcha. Okay. Victoria?
So I do agree with what everyone said. I feel like discernment can come in different ways. I feel like there's discernment that you receive from God if you ask him for it. And then there's that personal discernment, what you like and what you don't like. And I feel like discernment comes with making choices and deciding what choice to make from that judgment that you have. Even though the definition was said before, I mean, that's just what discernment, what I've known discernment to be, is the ability to make decisions based off of something that happened. I feel like I somewhat agree with Daniel about what he said in terms of like cancel culture and not immediately letting go of that person. And this is where I feel like communication comes into play. Communications to me is one of the things that makes a relationship either last longer or is like long. I feel like when a person does something wrong that you don't like, definitely whoever is offended by it should say something. However, if that action continues to happen and continues to happen, that's when it's just like, I'm sorry, this is not going to work. And then to answer the question about the poll question on if the person about the breaking up, if it's too long to take to this next stage, once again, that's something that's just between the people. If one person says, I want to get married at 5 years of dating and the other person is like, no, then that can definitely be a reason to break up. However, if both of them are like, you know what, maybe we just need a little bit more time, like Araba said before, maybe we're not financially there yet, or maybe I still need to learn more about you, or whatever it is, it definitely varies, but both people have to agree.
Gotcha. Okay. Sophie, I see your hand, and then after you, Araba, and that'll be our last hand as we wrap up.
Um, yeah, so you guys can hear me, right?
Yep, we go.
Cool. So I think with the question about the poll about the timing, that definitely does vary person to person. And I think as a woman, though, I've had this conversation with other women about the timestamp, because our bodies are a bit different, and there's like a window of when women have kids at their healthiest. You know, I think sometimes staying with somebody for a really long time, I can understand people wanting to break up if a man's like, it's like 5, 6 years in the relationship and we haven't even talked about like, are we gonna get married? If we haven't talked about the big things. So I think it's one thing to stay with somebody for a long period of time, but you have to make sure that within that period of time, you guys have spoken about what your end goal is. It's not just, you know, I wanted to see where this goes. I've heard men say, you know, I'm just, you know, seeing how this is going to go. But until that man says those words that you know are going to propel you into the future, that you're working for something in the future, I can agree with the woman who breaks up with the guy because within that extended amount of time, he hasn't shared what the end goal is of this. You know, I don't, my mom always says, don't waste your 20s with the man who's not going to marry you when you're 30s, because when you're ready to start, you know, having kids and things like that, and then you're 31, he's like, I don't want this happening. I have to start all over. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, Araba, you're last.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of what Sophie said. Essentially, I'm answering the question for myself. I would definitely break up with the person who I felt was taking too long towards getting the next steps. I'm coming into a relationship already knowing what I want. I know mature enough to know it might not happen when I want, but I also would expect the person understands it has to happen eventually, not 10 years, but maybe, I don't know, 2 years. So, and I would break up with the person if also, especially if I felt as though we were both in a space where we could make it happen. We could go to that next step. You are just dragging your feet for whatever, or there's something else that's stopping you. I'm not going to waste my time. However, there are certain situations where we both want the same things, and the person might, okay, say if the person is in school, they might want to wait till after they graduate school to get married. Cool with that. You know, I wanted to get married in February, but he doesn't graduate till May. I could wait. So, you know, I just feel like there's certain ways where you can bend and fold a little bit, but if you finish school already and you want us to keep dating for 5 more years, listen, someone else can give me what I want right now. So you got to hit the road.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, guys, I want to thank you guys again for being. I want to thank you guys again for being a part of this joint F.L.O.W Presents. You know, you guys have really put out some great ideas, different ideas out there, and it's an open environment. You know, a safe space for us to, as Christians, come out here and give, you know, our unadulterated truth, you know, to these topics. Really quickly, so I want to just from each of you, I'll go down the line. I want to figure out has your position changed? You know, did something in this conversation change your initial thought on, you know, is it too long, you know, to date? And you know, we just want to get your idea on that. So Yolanda, go ahead.
You first. I don't think my position has changed. It was very nice to hear like other people's point of views and get like their perspective on stuff. I think in general, a lot of us came to the same conclusion in terms of just the foundational question that we started off with. Is there such thing as a time limit for us to spend on how long do we date? And I think we all came to the same agreement that, you know, that's up to the person. We can't tell you or give you like 6 months and that's it. And I think even the people who are viewing in their poll said other. So I don't think my view on that has changed too much in terms of that.
Gotcha. Okay. Victoria?
I agree with Yolanda. I'm happy that I was able to hear various perspectives about this topic. I definitely stand by what I said before from personal experience and from just what I know as well. But definitely, I think, just like Yolanda said, I think that we all came to that conclusion that, you know, that it really just depends on the people. And as long as the love is there and you both have the same goal, then why not? So, yeah.
Gotcha. All right. All right. Sophie?
So I kind of hopped on late. So I think my mindset did kind of shift. It actually shifted like in the last like 2 minutes, with knowing that it's personalized. So I was thinking the extended amount of time, certain people might have an opportunity to do more things with their amount of time so that they can move faster in the relationship versus someone else who might be dating a military guy. So maybe it would take them 5 years to, you know, get to where they are because they're not constantly here with you versus somebody else. Maybe the person you're dating doesn't have a car, so they can't see you until here. Maybe you're long distance. So there's things that can cause a relationship to take more time to grow and like foster. So I think my mindset definitely changed on like leaving a dude after a year if you don't give me a ring. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. All right. Ricky, you sorry, Daniel, you next.
Yeah, I think I don't think anything as far as change happened with me, but I would say definitely, I guess, increased vigilance on like my intentions and what I am, you know, trying to make sure I'm clear about as far as how I will approach a relationship. You know, I think that's something we talked about. It seemed like time became a lot part of our conversation this time. Like we kept on putting time and implementing it in the situation. So I think for me, it's just making me realize that time needs to be valued a lot more in the realm of, you know, relationships, because you just never know what will happen. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Araba.
So my opinion has not changed. You know, but of course I definitely enjoyed hearing everyone else's perspective. However, you know, speaking for myself, I know what I want. So when I go into something, I have my end goal, I have my plan. Of course, it's not always going to go according to plan, but essentially, um, I know where I see myself. And so there's always going to be someone out there who wants the same things as me. So I'm not going to shortchange myself and try to, you know, not step on people's toes and walk on eggshells and be very shy about what I want. And so that's just, I'm sticking to my initial thought. And if you don't want the same things as me, don't talk to me, don't text me, don't be in my inbox, don't be around me. All right.
Wow, very very strong, very strong. Ricky, you're up.
No, I think my takeaway is that in a world full of uncertainty and kind of everyone's scatterbrained, it's good to be reminded that there are people who know exactly what they want, and that's important.
Gotcha. Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, so guys, thank you again for being a panelist on F.L.O.W Presents. We're just gonna wrap up with prayer. And just before we pray, we just want to remind everybody that the YouTube channel F.L.O.W. We want everyone to like, subscribe, you know, and watch out for future content. You know, this is a new journey for us, and we think that a lot of people are liking the comments and the conversation we're having, and we want to take it further. So we can't do that without you. So like and subscribe, and I'll pray to close. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for letting us have this conversation this evening. A lot of stuff is going on around us, and it's hard to see the grace and the mercy and all of this. But thank you for giving us, the ability to be able to come before you and ask for your strength, ask for your love and your kindness, and just to show us that there is a bigger picture in all of this, even though we don't understand right now. There is a bigger picture to a lot of what's going on, and we just want to thank you, for all of the relationships that we are a part of, whether it may be family, whether it may be an intimate relationship with another. We want to ask you to bless us and put a hedge of protection around those future relationships also that have not even come to be. Bless us and protect us, and help us all to be protected. Amen. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Be safe out
Thank
there.
you. Bye.